The awakening. Darkness. Silence. Then, a sharp pain in his head. He gasped as his eyes snapped open. Bright white lights above him blurred his vision. His body felt heavy, like he was trapped under a thick, invisible weight. He tried to move his arms, but they wouldn't respond. His legs felt numb. Panic shot through him like fire. Where am I? He blinked rapidly, his vision clearing. The ceiling above him was smooth and metallic, glowing with strange blue symbols. The air smelled different, clean, but not natural, not like Earth. His breath came faster. His heart pounded hard in his chest. Then he saw her. A tall, stunning woman stood near him, staring down with glowing blue eyes. Her skin was pale silver, almost shimmering under the cold light. Her hair was long and dark, falling in silky waves over her shoulders. She wore a tight metallic suit covered in glowing symbols, similar to the ones on the ceiling. She wasn't human. His throat was dry, but he forced out a whisper. Who are you?" The woman didn't answer. She tapped the air, and suddenly, a floating holographic screen appeared before her. Strange symbols flashed across it as she studied them. "Where am I?" He tried again, his voice shaking. Still, no answer. He gritted his teeth. He needed to move. He needed to get out of here. With all his strength, he tried to lift his right arm. It felt stiff, like his muscles weren't his own. Slowly, he managed to raise his hand off the surface he was lying on. He turned his head. The table beneath him was smooth and white, like polished stone. Wires ran from his arms to machines on the walls. "They did something to me." The woman suddenly noticed his movement. Her glowing eyes widened in surprise. "You? Awake too soon," she said in a soft but strange accent. Her voice was smooth, almost musical, but her English was broken. His pulse raced. "What does that mean? What did you do to me?" The woman's gaze flickered to the screen. Her silver eyebrows furrowed. "No, not ready yet. You." Suddenly, alarms blared through the room. A deep, robotic voice echoed in a language he didn't understand. The woman gasped and turned to a glowing panel on the wall. Symbols flashed red. She tapped it quickly, her fingers moving fast. The robotic voice continued, growing louder. Something was wrong. His fear turned to something else, survival instinct. He didn't know where he was. He didn't know why he was here. But one thing was clear. He was in danger. He gritted his teeth and forced his body to move. His fingers twitched. His arms trembled. His legs felt weak, but they responded. He pushed himself up, shaking. The woman turned sharply. "No, you must not move." A loud explosion shook the room. The lights flickered. A deep metallic groan echoed from the walls. The woman's eyes widened in alarm. She tapped the glowing panel again. The robotic voice responded. But this time, the words were sharp. He didn't need to understand the language to know what it meant. Someone was coming. The woman grabbed a small device from her waist. It flickered with energy. A weapon. She turned to him. "You, listen. No time. You come with me." He stared at her, breathing hard. "Why should I trust you?" Another explosion. The room trembled again. Sparks rained down from the ceiling. The air smelled like burning metal. The woman's eyes darkened. She stepped closer, leaning toward him. "Because they come for you." The doors suddenly slammed open. A group of tall, armored figures stormed inside, their glowing weapons aimed directly at him. Their helmets were smooth, their eyes like red slits. The woman moved fast. With a flick of her wrist, she raised her device and fired. A blue energy blast shot from it, striking the first intruder in the chest. He flew back, crashing against the wall. The others reacted instantly, raising their weapons. "Run," the woman shouted. His body reacted before his mind did. He jumped off the table, landing hard on his feet. His legs wobbled, but he pushed forward. "Run now, ask questions later." The The woman fired again, covering him. More armored figures entered, shouting in their strange language. They were after him. He didn't know why, but his instincts screamed one thing. He couldn't let them take him. The woman grabbed his arm, pulling him through a sliding metal door. The corridor beyond was dark, lit only by flickering blue lights. "This way," she ordered. Footsteps pounded behind them. The armored figures were chasing them. His mind raced. He still didn't know who she was. He didn't know why they wanted him. But one thing was certain. He had just woken up in a nightmare, and he had no idea how to escape. The escape plan. The corridor stretched before him, a narrow tunnel of smooth, glowing walls. His breath came in short, ragged gasps. His body still felt heavy, but adrenaline pushed him forward. He wasn't sure how he was moving so fast. His legs should have collapsed under him. The alien woman ran beside him, gripping his arm with surprising strength. Her silver skin shimmered under the dim lights, her dark hair flowing behind her as she moved with fluid grace. Behind them, heavy boots slammed against the metal floor. The sound of pursuit. The enemy was fast. Too fast. "Who are they?" he panted, glancing over his shoulder. She didn't answer. Instead, she grabbed his arm and pulled him into a side passage, pressing him against the cold metal wall. She raised a small, sleek device and tapped it against the doorframe. The passage behind them sealed shut just as a red energy blast struck the spot where they had been standing. The explosion shook the walls. A muffled roar came from the other side. They had blocked the entrance, but not for long. The woman exhaled sharply, looking at him with those piercing, glowing blue eyes. "They will break through soon," she said, voice clipped. "We must move." He swallowed, his throat dry. "Move where?" A holographic map appeared in front of her, glowing in the air like a ghostly blueprint. He saw a massive structure floating in a dark sky, connected by glowing pathways and towering spires. It wasn't Earth. It wasn't a spaceship. "What is this place?" he asked, scanning the map. Her gaze flickered to him, calculating. "A research station. Above your planet." His mind froze. Above his planet. Was she saying this station was floating in space? "I don't have time to explain," she said, glancing at the sealed door. It was already starting to glow red from the heat of enemy weapons. "I saved you. Now I help you escape. Trust me or die here." The door shook violently. The enemy was coming. He clenched his fists. He had no reason to trust her, but he had even less reason to trust whoever was trying to capture him. "Fine," he muttered. "What's the plan?" The woman gave a sharp nod. "Follow." She sprinted down the dim corridor. He pushed himself to keep up. Something was wrong with his body. His limbs moved faster than they should. His heartbeat was steady despite the running. He felt stronger than he ever had before. But why? They turned a corner and entered a vast hall lined with glass tubes. He skidded to a stop. His stomach twisted. Inside the tubes were humans. Dozens of them, suspended in a thick, glowing blue liquid, their eyes closed, their bodies limp. Some looked half-formed. Others had strange markings on their skin, scars running along their arms and legs. "What is this?" His voice was hoarse. The woman hesitated. Failed experiments. A cold chill spread through his chest. His reflection glowed against the glass of one of the tubes. He saw his own face, but it looked different. His skin was smoother, unmarked. His muscles were more defined, almost unnatural. His eyes, had they always been this sharp? "What did you do to me?" The woman's expression hardened. Later. "We must go." He yanked his arm away. "No. Tell me now." Before she could answer, a deafening boom echoed from the passage behind them. The enemy had broken through. Figures in dark armor stormed in, their weapons glowing red. The woman reacted instantly. She pulled a small silver orb from her belt and threw it toward the enemy. The air rippled as a wave of energy exploded outward, sending the armored figures flying back. She grabbed his wrist. "Move." They raced through the lab, past the rows of silent, floating humans. A distant alarm howled through the station. Up ahead, a massive metal door slid open. Beyond it was a docking bay. And a ship. Sleek, black, and humming with energy. A way out. But as they ran toward it, a shadow moved in the corner of his vision. A figure blocked their path. Tall, clad in intricate silver armor, with glowing red eyes staring directly at him. The air around the figure shimmered with raw energy. "You are not meant to leave," the armored warrior said in a voice that sounded almost human. His breath caught. The way the figure stood, the way it held its weapon, it was familiar. The woman tensed beside him. "We do not have time for this." The warrior raised a hand. A pulse of energy rippled forward. The impact struck his chest like a hammer. He staggered backward, pain jolting through his ribs. But instead of knocking him down, something inside him reacted. His vision sharpened. His muscles tensed. And before he even thought about it, he moved. His body twisted out of the way at inhuman speed. The armored warrior hesitated. "Interesting," the warrior murmured. His breathing was uneven. He looked at his own hands. What the hell was happening to him? The woman lunged forward, attacking the warrior with a surge of blue energy. The force sent the enemy stumbling back. She turned to him. "Get on the ship. Now." He didn't argue. Not this time. They sprinted toward the waiting vessel. The ramp slid open. As soon as they stepped inside, the woman slammed her hand on a control panel. The ship roared to life. Through the viewport, he saw the warrior watching them, unmoving, as if waiting. As the ship lifted off the ground, leaving the station behind, a strange feeling settled in his chest. That wasn't the last time he would see that warrior. And deep down, he already knew it. The first battle. The ship's interior hummed with a low, steady energy. The moment the ramp sealed behind them, the alien woman rushed forward, pressing glowing symbols on a control panel. Engines roared beneath them. The walls trembled as the ship shot forward, escaping the station. Through the large viewport ahead, the vast darkness of space stretched endlessly, punctuated by distant stars. He stumbled, gripping a nearby console for support. His body was still too light, too fast. His heartbeat should have been pounding from the sprint, but it was steady, too steady. "What did you do to me?" he demanded, turning to the woman. She ignored him, her glowing blue eyes focused on the controls. A holographic screen flickered to life, showing a red alert. More alien symbols flashed across it. She muttered something in her language, jaw tightening. He slammed a fist against the metal wall. "Talk to me." The woman finally turned, her gaze sharp. "We are not safe yet. I explain when we survive." Survive? A cold shiver crawled down his spine. Before he could respond, the ship's alarms blared. A new sound. "Warning. Incoming hostiles." A robotic voice echoed through the ship's speakers. He turned toward the viewport just in time to see 3 massive warships appear from the blackness of space, their sleek silver hulls glowing with red energy. They were waiting for them. A swarm of smaller fighter ships launched from the warships, their engines burning like tiny suns. "Strap in," the woman ordered, gripping the controls. The ship jerked violently as she swerved, dodging the first wave of energy blasts. Bright streaks of red fire lit up the void, barely missing them. He was thrown sideways but caught himself just in time. He dropped into his seat, strapping himself in. His fingers dug into the armrests as the ship spiraled through a chaotic storm of laser fire. The woman's hands moved like lightning, controlling the ship with effortless skill. She gritted her teeth. "They outnumber us. We need weapons. Weapons." His gaze darted around the ship's controls. A section of the dashboard flashed red. A weapons system. "I got it," he said, reaching for the interface. The moment his fingers touched the controls, something strange happened. A flood of information surged through his mind. He suddenly understood the weapon's layout, how to fire, how to track targets, how to control energy bursts with precision. It felt natural, like he had done this before. But he hadn't. His chest tightened. What did they do to me? No time for questions. A fighter ship swerved into view, aiming directly for them. Instinct took over. He tapped a glowing symbol. A panel slid open, revealing two glowing blue cannons on the ship's wings. The enemy fighter fired first, too late. He pressed a button. A pulse of energy streaked forward, striking the enemy craft dead center. It exploded into a ball of fire. The woman shot him a look, part surprise, part approval. Keep shooting. More enemies swarmed in. He locked onto 3 targets at once, his mind somehow tracking them all. His fingers moved before he could think. He fired again. One ship erupted in flames. Another spiraled out of control, crashing into its own warship. He exhaled sharply, muscles tensed. It felt too easy, like he was built for this. The woman's gaze flickered toward him. You are adapting quickly. He clenched his jaw. What the hell did they put in me? Before she could answer, a warning flashed on the screen. Enemy warship charging main cannon. Through the viewport, he saw a massive energy blast forming at the center of the largest warship. A swirling red vortex, growing larger by the second. The woman muttered a curse in her language. Shields will not hold against that. He gripped the console, scanning the battlefield. The enemy was closing in fast. The warship's cannon was nearly fully charged. Think. Then, something caught his eye. A debris field, floating wreckage from an old battle. An idea formed in his mind. Fly into that debris field, he ordered. She hesitated. That is, just do it. She growled but obeyed. The ship dove into the wreckage, weaving between shattered metal and broken ships. The enemy fighters hesitated. Then, just as he predicted, the warship fired. A blinding red beam of energy surged toward them. He braced for impact, but at the last second, he grabbed the controls and swerved. The blast missed them by inches and slammed into the floating wreckage instead. The explosion was massive. The debris shattered apart, sending fiery metal in all directions. Several enemy fighters were caught in the blast, exploding instantly. The shockwave knocked their ship forward at high speed. They spun wildly. He struggled to hold onto the controls, muscles screaming as he forced the ship into a steady glide. Then, silence. The warship loomed in the distance, smoke rising from the wreckage around it. Their shot had backfired, crippling their own forces. The woman exhaled, a small smirk on her lips. Not bad. Human. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. The battlefield was quiet. For now. But deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. The enemy wouldn't let them go so easily, and he still had no idea what he was. The Great Escape. The silence inside the ship was thick. Only the distant hum of the engines filled the space. The battle was over. For now. He exhaled slowly, his fingers still curled around the weapon controls. His pulse should have been racing, but it wasn't. It felt too calm, too controlled. He wasn't sure what was scarier, the enemy that had tried to kill him, or the fact that he had reacted like a soldier. The alien woman stood at the control panel, her sharp, glowing blue eyes scanning the battlefield. The holographic display flickered, showing damaged enemy warships retreating into the void. But they wouldn't be gone for long. She turned toward him. We bought time, but not much. He swallowed. That's not good enough. Where are we going? She hesitated, then brought up another holographic map. The image rotated. A massive planet-sized station hovered above a swirling blue world. It was shaped like a ring, glowing with city lights. This, she said, is Xiphos Prime, the only place we can hide. His brows furrowed. Hide? From who? The woman's jaw tightened. From the ones who made you. The words hit him like a hammer. Made me? His hands clenched into fists. I don't even know who the hell I am. She stepped forward, staring at him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. Then listen, and I will tell you. He stood frozen as she took a slow breath. You are called Project Vanguard, the first human in centuries to be genetically rebuilt. His chest tightened. Genetically rebuilt. What does that mean? She glanced at the screen. Humans were once feared across the galaxy. You ruled. You conquered. You were unstoppable. He shook his head. That's impossible. We don't even have space travel. Her eyes darkened. Because they took it from you. The words left a ringing silence in the room. They feared your species, she continued. So they wiped your history clean. Erased every trace of what you were. He staggered back, gripping the wall. It didn't make sense. His entire life, everything he knew, had been a lie. No, he muttered. That's insane. She pressed a button, and the hologram shifted. Rows of cryogenic pods appeared, stretching endlessly in a dark lab. Inside them were humans. They took your ancestors, she said softly. Experimented. Tested. You are the first success. His breath caught. Those people, the ones in the pods at the station, they were failed experiments. And he was the one that worked. His stomach churned. His skin crawled. He wasn't just a person. He was an experiment. Before he could say another word, the ship's alarm screamed. Warning. Hyperspace, piqued. The ship lurched violently. Something massive loomed ahead. A warship, bigger than any he had seen before. Its sleek, black hull pulsed with energy. It had been waiting for them. No, the woman whispered. Her hands flew over the controls. It's him. The comms crackled to life. A deep, distorted voice echoed through the speakers. Project Vanguard. You are ordered to surrender. The voice sent a chill through his bones. He knew that voice. Somehow, the ship shook again. A tractor beam locked onto them, pulling them toward the warship. The woman cursed. They are dragging us in. I cannot break free. He gritted his teeth. He wasn't about to let these bastards take him again. His gaze locked onto a series of blinking switches near his seat. Emergency systems. Weapons. Then he saw it. The manual override. A way to shut down their ship's power completely. Long enough to break the tractor beam. But it was risky. If they lost power in the middle of space, they might never get it back. Do you trust me? He asked suddenly. The woman's head snapped toward him. What? I have an idea, he said, fingers hovering over the controls. But I need you to trust me. She hesitated. Then she gave a slow nod. That was all he needed. He slammed his fist onto the override switch. The ship's engines died instantly. The lights flickered out. The hum of energy vanished. The tractor beam wavered. Then, they dropped like a stone. They plunged into open space, tumbling uncontrollably. The warship's tractor beam had lost its lock on them. The woman swore, restarting engines. Now, her fingers flew over the controls. Sparks flashed. The ship groaned. The warship's weapons charged. They had seconds before it fired. Come on, come on. The ship roared back to life. He didn't wait for orders. He grabbed the controls and punched the thrusters. The ship blasted forward, skimming the surface of the warship, dodging the first volley of enemy fire by inches. Then, the jump drive engaged. A blinding light filled the cockpit. The warship vanished behind them. They had escaped. For now, the woman slumped back in her seat, exhaling. That was reckless. He smirked, his heart still pounding. Yeah. Well, it worked. She looked at him, eyes narrowing. You are more than what they made you to be. He wasn't sure what that meant. But one thing was clear. Whoever was after him wasn't done yet. and he still had no idea who he truly was. The truth revealed. The ship drifted through the vast emptiness of space, its engines humming softly. The battle was over. They had escaped. For now. He sat in the co-pilot's chair, staring at his hands. They weren't shaking. They weren't even tired. Something was wrong. No, something was different. The way he fought. The way he flew the ship. The way his body moved like it had muscle memory for things he had never done. Who the hell am I? The alien woman, his only ally so far, was silent, focused on the controls. Her silver fingers tapped at the holographic display, her glowing blue eyes scanning the data. Finally, she spoke. They will come for us again. He scoffed. Yeah, I figured. She turned to him. You do not understand. You are important. He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. You keep saying that, but I don't even know who I am. The woman hesitated. Then, as if making a decision, she pressed a button on the console. The lights dimmed. A new holographic projection flickered to life between them. Rows of cryogenic pods, thousands of them. Each one contained a human. This, she said, her voice low, is the truth your kind never knew. His stomach twisted. What is this? She tapped the projection. The image shifted, zooming in on a facility like the one they had escaped from. A cold realization hit him. These are the experiments. She nodded. For centuries, they have tried to recreate what your people once were, but they failed. Again and again. He swallowed. And me. She locked eyes with him. You are the first success. The words settled over him like a weight. He clenched his fists. What does that mean? The projection shifted again. This time, it showed a battlefield. Humans wearing sleek, advanced armor, fighting against towering alien creatures. They weren't losing. They were winning. They feared your kind, she said softly, because you were powerful, too powerful. The image changed. A council of alien leaders sat in a massive chamber, surrounding a holographic display of Earth. The planet was marked with symbols. He didn't need to understand the language to know what they meant. Targeted, suppressed, controlled. They did not conquer your world with war, the woman continued. They conquered it by erasing your history, your power, your identity. His blood turned cold. That's insane, he muttered. She tilted her head. Is it? He wanted to argue. He wanted to say it wasn't possible. But deep down, he knew. It felt true. His entire life, something had always felt off. Like the world was smaller than it should be. Like humanity was more fragile than it was meant to be. Then why bring me back? He asked, his voice rough. The woman tapped the hologram again. A new image appeared. A man. He wore alien armor, but his face was human. His eyes were the same as his. A chill ran down his spine. Who is that? The woman hesitated. Then she spoke a name. Commander Ashen. The name meant nothing. And yet, it made his heart pound. Who is he? He asked again, quieter this time. She exhaled. Your predecessor. His breath caught. You mean? He was the last successful experiment, she said, until he betrayed them. A flash of rage flickered through him, anger that didn't belong to him. Memories that weren't his burned at the edges of his mind. Pain, battle, betrayal. He clenched his jaw. What happened to him? The woman's expression darkened. He disappeared. Silence filled the cockpit. Then the ship's comms crackled. A deep voice. Asterisk, asterisk, distorted but familiar. Asterisk, asterisk, echoed through the speakers. Brother, you are awake. His heart nearly stopped. The woman tensed, eyes widening. No. The holographic display shifted. A warship loomed in the distance, waiting for them. The same warship from before. And standing at its bridge, watching through a transmission screen, was Commander Ashen. His own reflection stared back at him. Only older, harsher, stronger. The voice spoke again. Come home. The signal cut out. The warship activated its weapons. The woman turned to him, urgency in her glowing blue eyes. We need to run. He didn't move, because deep down he knew. He couldn't run forever. He had to face the truth. And Commander Ashen had the answers. The betrayal. The silence inside the cockpit felt heavier than the void beyond the viewport. He sat frozen, staring at the transmission screen where Commander Ashen's face had just disappeared. His face, older, sharper, a reflection of a future he didn't remember. The woman at the controls, his only ally, was tense, her silver fingers gripping the panel as her glowing blue eyes darted between him and the approaching warship. She wasn't breathing. Not properly. She was afraid. That terrified him more than anything else. Who is he? His voice was hoarse, almost a whisper. The woman's jaw tightened. I told you. He was the last successful experiment before you. He shook his head. No, that's not what I mean. He turned toward her, fists clenched. Why did he call me brother? She hesitated, just for a second. That was all he needed. You're hiding something. His voice darkened. She exhaled sharply, pressing a sequence of symbols on the console. The ship's engines flared to life. We do not have time for this. A warning tone blared through the cockpit. The warship was locking onto them. I need to know, he demanded. If I was created, how the hell do I have a brother? The woman's glowing blue eyes flickered toward him. And then she said the words that shattered everything. Because you are not the first. His blood ran cold. What? Her voice was barely above a whisper. There were others before you. His pulse pounded in his ears. No, that wasn't possible. I saw the pods, he snapped. You told me they were failures. They were, she admitted, but Ashen was not. His breathing grew heavier. Then why did they make me? The ship shook violently. The warship had fired. A warning flashed. Impact in 10 seconds. She turned to the controls, her fingers flying over them. Voice clipped. Because Ashen was the first experiment to escape. His breath caught. Escape. They made him the perfect soldier, she continued, voice tight. But he was too perfect. He turned against them. He destroyed entire facilities. He freed the others. He freed them. A sharp pain stabbed through his head. Memories that weren't his. Running. Fighting. Flames. A voice screaming his name. Ashen. Wait. He gasped, gripping his head. No, that's not real. Her voice softened. You remember, don't you? The pain in his skull burned hotter. He didn't want to remember. He wasn't supposed to remember. Boom. The ship jolted sideways. The warship's blast just barely missed them. She cursed in her language, gripping the controls. We need to jump. Now. His chest heaved, mind still spinning. But the moment she said those words, something inside him clicked. No, he muttered. The woman's head snapped toward him. No. His fists clenched. I'm not running anymore. He stood, ignoring the way the ship shook beneath him. She grabbed his wrist. They will kill you. He looked down at her, his voice steady. Then why haven't they yet? The words hung between them. The truth settled. If Ashen wanted him dead, he wouldn't have spoken. He wouldn't have sent a message. He would have just destroyed the ship. Ashen didn't want him dead. He wanted him back. I need to know who I am, he said, voice firm. The woman's fingers tightened around his wrist. She was breathing too fast now. You are not ready. Maybe not, he admitted, but I won't find answers by running. Her eyes searched his. Then, slowly, she released her grip. She exhaled, stepping back. Then I am coming with you. His brow furrowed. Why? Her expression hardened. Because I saved you once. I will not let them take you again." He didn't argue. They turned to the console. The warship's hangar bay loomed ahead, its massive doors opening like the mouth of a beast. "Take us in," he said. She hesitated. Then her hands moved. The ship's thrusters dimmed. They were going in. As they approached, he could see figures waiting inside the hangar, dozens of armored soldiers, and standing at the center, watching them with sharp, knowing eyes. Ashen, his own reflection, older, harsher, waiting. The ship landed with a soft thud. He stood at the ramp, fists clenched, heart steady. The woman stepped beside him, her weapon strapped to her belt. She was ready to fight, but he wasn't here to fight. Not yet. He was here for answers. The ramp lowered. The air was thick with silence. Then, Ashen spoke. "Welcome home, brother." The final stand. The hangar bay was eerily silent. Rows of armored soldiers stood at attention, their glowing visors locked onto him. Their weapons were holstered, but he knew they could raise them in an instant. And at the center of it all stood Commander Ashen. His face was calm, cold, calculating. A face that was too much like his own. The woman beside him tensed, her silver fingers hovering near her weapon. She was ready to fight their way out. But he wasn't here to fight. Not yet. He stepped forward, meeting Ashen's gaze. "You called me brother," he said. His voice didn't waver. "What does that mean?" Ashen studied him for a long moment. Then he spoke. "It means you are one of us." The word sent a chill down his spine. Ashen gestured to the soldiers around them. "These are not your enemies. They are your kin. Like you, they were created for war. And like you, they were lied to." His pulse pounded. Lied to. Ashen tilted his head. "Did you think you were the first?" A lump formed in his throat. He already knew the answer. The woman beside him stiffened. "He does not belong to you." Ashen's glowing red eyes flickered toward her. "And yet, he is here." Silence. She had no answer for that. Ashen took a step closer. He didn't reach for a weapon. He wasn't afraid. "Tell me, brother," he said. "Do you feel it?" He frowned. "Feel what?" Ashen exhaled softly. "The power inside you." The word sent a ripple down his spine. He hadn't noticed before, not completely. But now that he thought about it, the way his body moved faster than it should, the way his mind processed battle like second nature, the way he had piloted a ship, fired weapons, and outmaneuvered warships with instincts he never should have had. And then there was the way he felt right now. Standing in this room, facing soldiers engineered for war, he didn't feel fear. He felt stronger, more alive. Ashen smirked as if he could see the truth settling in. "You are waking up," he said. "I was the first. But you were their second attempt. And unlike me, they made you better." His stomach twisted. "No," he muttered. "I'm not like you." Ashen raised an eyebrow. "Aren't you?" He clenched his fists. "I wasn't made to be a weapon." Ashen laughed. A deep, quiet sound. "You still believe that?" he said, shaking his head. "You were born in a lab, brother. You were engineered for one purpose. War." The words hit like a hammer. No, that couldn't be true. Could it? Ashen stepped closer. His eyes weren't cruel. They weren't filled with hatred. They were filled with understanding. "I fought against them," Ashen said. "I tore down their walls. I freed the others. And I came back for you." His mind reeled. He was lying. He had to be. "Why should I believe you?" he snapped. Ashen's gaze hardened. "Because deep down, you already know the truth." The room was too quiet. The woman beside him was tense, watching them both, waiting. Then, alarms blared. The soldiers in the hangar reacted instantly, drawing their weapons. The woman grabbed his arm. "They found us." Ashen's face darkened. So they followed you here. The ceiling trembled. Explosions rumbled through the warship. Then, the voice of the High Council echoed through the comms. This is the High Order. Surrender the experiments. We will erase this mistake. A cold chill ran down his spine. Erase. That meant only one thing. They were here to destroy everyone in this room. Ashen turned toward the soldiers. Prepare for battle. They saluted in unison, moving with military precision. He swallowed hard. What's happening? Ashen didn't look at him. They don't want to capture us, he said. They want to wipe us out. The realization hit like a storm. He had been running from the truth, from his past. But now, there was nowhere left to run. A choice was in front of him. Stand with Ashen. Stand with the people like him. Or fight alone. He turned to the woman. She looked at him, eyes uncertain. I saved you, she whispered. Don't forget that. His hands trembled. He looked at Ashen. At the soldiers. At the enemy ships preparing to wipe them all from existence. Then, he made his choice. He grabbed a fallen weapon from the floor. Ashen watched him, waiting. He exhaled sharply. Then, he said the words that changed everything. Let's finish this. Ashen's smirk widened. Now you're ready. The hangar doors exploded. The final battle had begun.